How did you meet Soumia, and how was the making of her first and also her awesome first album? So I met Soumia. So she had a single with Ronald Rubinel in 2001 called Temps pour Temps with Talina. And so I heard about her, but I was not really. But I worked already with her management, MGTX. They hired me from some shows. And one day I was doing a compilation. So I'm not sure if this is how I met her or if I met her before. I'm not sure. But we were doing a compilation called... It was not Caribbean Soul. I think I was doing a compilation for Pastel Records where I was doing some beats and some songs. And I produced a song for her. I think I met her before, but I'm not sure how, when. But as my memory goes, that one time we had that song that we were recording, and Père Lama was doing the chorus and she was doing the lead vocals, and I was producing a song for her. It was for a compilation. I don't remember what compilation, but I remember that I was doing this compilation. And so we worked together at that time. So we did that song. I don't even know if this song is online. I don't remember, but it was... Yeah, it was for compilation, I don't know. But so she came to the studio of Ronald Rubinel, Latitude 101, and we recorded that song, and it was a cool experience. She was cool, so we kept in touch, but nothing special. After that, I went to London with Linsha, and I was telling Linsha that, hey, I want to do a Zouk album with a girl, and I mean, I discovered you, so I believe it should be you. And I had a deal after doing Caribbean Soul with Ronald Rubinel where we would do 50-50. He brings the studio, I bring the project, the artist, and we do 50-50, and he sells them to etc. So he told me, hey, who you want to work with? And I told him, well, listen, let's start with Linsha. And so I said, yeah, that's a great idea. So I started working on an album with a few beats. I started doing a few Candy Zouk beats, a few instrumentals. And we go to London to do a show for because I think Mélanger was number one. So I do a show in London with Linsha, and then the next day we had a show somewhere north of France. And then in the train back, we had like 4 hours in the train, and I made her listen to some beats, and I explained to her the whole plan. We're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, we're gonna do an album that mixes, because back in the days you had Cap Virgin albums, you had Zouk albums, and then you had compa albums. And I said, listen, I want to do an album where I mix Zouk, Candy Zouk, Kizomba, Cabo Love. At that time we were calling it Cabo Love, and a little bit of compa all together. And we're gonna do this number of tracks, and we're gonna do it like this, and we're gonna record there, and we're gonna do this. Do you want to be the artist? And Linsha told me, oh yeah, I would love to, let's do it. And so I start working. I think I start working for a few weeks. I start having like a beginning of the album. So I produce Mes Sentiments, I produced I don't remember what songs I produced, but I had like, usually when I do an album with an artist, I decide the universe, and then I start working on, you know, all the instrumentals. So I had like a few instrumentals already, and the goal was to produce this with Ronald Rubinel, and to launch that. And so that was 2002. And I think at that time I introduced Linsha to Passy because he needed a girl to sing a chorus for a song. So I introduced her, and I think Passy was about to have his own label, and his manager was becoming the CEO of Warner Music. So a few people were talking to Linsha to do, instead of doing a Zouk career, to go into rap R&B and do something more national and sign to a big label. So I remember we had a tour. It was me, Linsha, Soumia, and Lord City, and DJ Jairo. And we had a big tour. So we were supposed to all go to a big bus and then do like 10 cities around France. And the day before, Linsha comes to my house and she's like, yeah, you know, I believe that I want to do this. I don't know if I want to do Zouk. I might want to do R&B and blah, 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 blah. And I have these proposals and I'm going to do this. So, you know, I think I'm going to do something else and I'm not going to work with you on the album. And I was like, oh, bummer. But I was like, hey, listen, if you prefer, if you have opportunities to signing in a big record label, I don't even have a record label. So, okay. I mean, I understand. So I ended up with it was not an album, but it was the beginning of a project. So I had a folder with a few beats that I wanted to do her album. And so I end up with the beginning of a project and no artist. So I was a little disappointed, but hey, it is what it is. We go on tour. And while we are going on tour, I'm always there chilling with Soumia because Soumia is very gangster. You know, she's very, I mean, back in the day, she was very street. So we were always laughing, me and Soumia. So we in the bus store talking always, ha ha ha, whatever. And her manager, Martial, tells me, hey, why don't you sign artists? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm actually working on my label and I'm working on the ideas of how I'm gonna do and who I'm gonna do with. And I think I didn't want to work with Rubinel anymore. So I didn't know exactly how I was gonna do my label, but I knew I wanted to work with artists and produce artists. And he tells me, what about Soumia? And I was like, Soumia? I was like, yeah, do you believe that people will accept like a Congolese producer producing a Moroccan girl doing Zouk with a Cameroonian manager? And he was like, yeah, why not? I was like, yeah, that's true, why not? And then I was like, you know what? That might be an idea. And I was like, yeah, bro, let's do it. So I was like, you know what? That could actually be a good idea. She looks great. She sings. She writes well. She writes very well. But how do we work? And then Martial told me, Tommy, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you so much. I'm coming to your question soon. And he told me, why don't you want to work with Section Zouk, Harold Sangamalon? I was like, so I worked with Harold in 2001 on tour. We went on tour together and I actually liked the way we worked, but it was just on tour. He hired me to perform a month in Martinique. And I was like, that might be a good idea. So we went to sit down with the Soumia project. We didn't have nothing, not a song, not a demo, nothing. He just told me, and I remember I worked with him. He bought beats for Sonia Dersion's second album. So I went there with Martial and Soumia, and Harold asked me, "Hey, how much is it gonna cost?" And I was like, "Well, you have a studio?" It was like, "Yeah." I said, "I have beats." I said, "Yeah, let's do 50-50." And he was like, "Yeah, what do you bring to the table?" I said, "I bring all the beats." They said, "But you're gonna do all the beats?" I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna do all the beats." And I told him I just need somebody to play the guitars, and he told me, "Yeah, Thierry Delaunay." And I said, "Yeah, in some songs I might need live bass." He told me that he had a few people, and I told him I need an engineer to record, and I need another engineer to mix. Because at that time I didn't know how to record myself, and I didn't know how to mix. And he said, "Okay, it's gonna cost us that much for recording. That's gonna cost us that much for mixing. Plus, it's gonna cost us that for guitars. Then it's gonna cost us this amount for chorus, to do all the choruses. So we're gonna call Valérie les Sœurs Tribord." And then he told me, "Okay, what else?" I said, "That's it." And he was like, "Wait a minute, who's gonna do the drums?" I said, "No, I'm gonna program everything." He said, "But who's gonna play the keyboard?" "Me." "Who's gonna the bass?" "Me." "But who's gonna?" "I'm gonna do everything." He was like, "Wow." And he was like, "Wait a minute, so we can do the whole album like with..." He used to pay like 50,000 to do an album, and my budget to do Soumia's album was like 5,000. And he was like, "What?" And he was like, "You have other projects like this?" I said, "Well, listen, if we work well together, I have Eligio, ABG, I got my own stuff, but let's start with Soumia and see what goes." And we recorded the album, and the first song we did was Mes Sentiments, Rendez-moi. When he heard those two songs, he was like, "Oh shit." And listen, the same year we did my album, Soumia's album, Eligio's album, and we made him millions of euros. So that's how we started working together. But this was 20 years ago, so, but more or less. All right,